Balaam, when God speaks through a divided heart. The story of Balaam appears in Numbers 22 to 24, with consequences that echo far beyond those chapters. Balaam is one of the most unsettling figures in Scripture, not because he openly rebels against God, but because he speaks God's words while quietly resisting God's will. Balaam is not an Israelite. He is a prophet for hire, known across the region for his spiritual power. Kings believe his blessings work and his curses carry weight. His reputation is such that Balak, king of Moab, summons him when Israel encamps near Moab's borders. Balak is terrified. Israel has defeated powerful nations, and Moab knows it cannot win militarily. So Balak turns to spiritual warfare. He asks Balaam to curse Israel. At first, Balaam responds correctly. He says he can only speak what the Lord allows. God explicitly tells him not to go with Balak's messengers and not to curse Israel, for they are blessed. This should end the story, but it doesn't. Balak sends more officials, offering greater honor and reward. Balaam asks God again. God allows Balaam to go, but only to say what God commands. This permission is not approval, it is exposure. On the journey, God's anger burns against Balaam. An angel blocks the path, unseen by Balaam, but clearly visible to the donkey he rides. 3 times the donkey turns aside to avoid death. 3 times Balaam beats the animal in frustration. Then God opens the donkey's mouth. The donkey speaks, rebuking Balaam for his cruelty and blindness. Only then does Balaam see the angel standing in the road, sword drawn. The irony is sharp. A pagan prophet cannot see what his animal can. Balaam continues to Moab. Balak prepares altars. Balaam opens his mouth to curse Israel, and blessing pours out instead. This happens repeatedly. Each time Balak grows more furious. Each time Balaam declares that Israel is protected by God and cannot be cursed. One of Balaam's prophecies even points forward to a coming king, a star rising from Jacob, a faint but remarkable messianic echo. Eventually, Balaam leaves, but the story is not over. Later scripture reveals what Balaam did next. When he could not curse Israel directly, he advised Moab to seduce Israel indirectly, through intermarriage, sexual immorality, and idolatry. Numbers 25, 31-16. Israel falls. Judgment follows. Thousands die. Balaam's tongue blessed Israel. Balaam's counsel destroyed them. Why Balaam matters? Balaam matters because he proves that accurate prophecy is not the same as faithful obedience. He speaks God's words. He hears God's voice. He experiences God's power. Yet his heart remains divided. Balaam wants God and reward, obedience and advantage, truth and control. Scripture later condemns the way of Balaam as loving gain more than righteousness. 2 Peter 2:15, Jude 11, Revelation 2:14. Balaam stands as a warning to those who operate close to holy things without submitting fully to God. What is often overlooked? What is most often overlooked is that Balaam never directly disobeys God with his mouth, but he disobeys him with his strategy. God forbade a curse. Balaam found a workaround. This reveals a subtle but deadly temptation, using spiritual insight to achieve ungodly ends. Balaam becomes the prototype of religious compromise, appearing obedient while quietly undermining God's people. Another overlooked detail. God speaks clearly to Balaam, repeatedly. The problem is not lack of revelation. The problem is lack of surrender. What Balaam means for us today. Balaam speaks powerfully to religious leaders, teachers, and spiritually knowledgeable people. He warns us that spiritual gifting does not equal spiritual maturity, that knowing God's language does not guarantee sharing God's heart, that compromise often enters not through denial of truth, but through manipulation of it. Balaam also exposes how destruction often comes from within. Israel could not be cursed, but it could be corrupted. That lesson echoes throughout Scripture and church history. Finally, Balaam reminds us that God can speak truth through flawed instruments, but that does not excuse the instrument. God's purposes stand, but accountability remains. A final warning. Balaam's story ends quietly but ominously. He is later killed among Israel's enemies, Numbers 31. His legacy is not his prophecy, but his influence. Balaam shows us that the most dangerous opposition to God's people often wears religious clothing, speaks orthodox words, and offers clever alternatives to obedience. The question his story leaves us with is simple and searching. Are we content to speak God's truth, or are we willing to live under it? Because the way of Balaam always ends the same.